Cool. So good morning and good afternoon or good evening or whatever time it is for people. Welcome to this session as part of the Circular City Week, New York, on focusing on water in the city, bringing circularity to the urban water management. We will start now. People will be continuing to join, but we have quite a bit to get through. So just, welcome to the session. Just to introduce myself quickly, I'm Scott Allison, Senior Project Manager at Clean, which is a Danish environmental cluster. And we are based in Copenhagen. And we are a platform partner as part of this Circular City Week, New York. And we're also kind of part of these programs that are co-hosting this this session here, which is Access Cities, which is a global initiative looking to develop sustainable kind of solutions within cities, and EU TechBridge, which is a European platform connecting European SMEs with North American end users. And I know we have Natalie from the Danish Cleantech Hub. Would you like to just welcome on behalf of the Circular City Week?
Yes, thank you, Scott. And hi, everyone. Thanks so much for participating in this very exciting event. Personally, I've also been very excited because water in the cities and water in general is, of course, naturally a very important area within also the circular economy. So we've been excited to have this event as part of Circular City Week and would like to thank all of our partners for making this happen. We could not do it without you. And of course, also thanks a lot to the participants and also the pioneer partners who are part of this week as well. Again, Scott, over to you, and thanks everyone for being a part of this great initiative.
Super, thanks, Natalie. Today we have some exciting kind of speakers here that's going to be contributing to the session. So we have Alan Kong from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. We have Tuna Monk from Ramble, Nana Raun from LNH Water, and Fernando Ramirez from Hydroloop. So we'll be having a couple of presentations, one from Alan and one from Tina first, and then quick short presentation from Nana and Fernando, and then we'll go into a bit more open discussion. Everyone in the session is muted, but please feel free to add any questions in the chat as we go along, and I'll ask any that pop into there. But I'll pass it straight over to Alan to kick us off. So I'll stop sharing and you can start sharing.
Great, thank you, Scott. Let me pull up my screen. Okay, and just let me know if you have any trouble seeing it. So thank you for having me on today, and eager to hear from the other panelists and hear the questions from the group attending this session today. So I'm going to talk about my perspective from the New York City Department of Environmental Protection. We are the largest combined water and wastewater utility in the United States, with about 6,000 employees and an annual budget of more than $1 billion, which is a lot of money. We deliver almost 1 billion gallons per day of water. I apologize for the non-metric units, to approximately 9 million New Yorkers, and maintain about 7,000 miles of water mains. We protect approximately 2,000 square miles of watershed, including 19 reservoirs and 3 controlled lakes. We're also responsible for wastewater treatment, treating over 1 billion gallons of wastewater each day. We also operate and maintain 14 wastewater resource recovery facilities, about 96 pumping stations, and 7,500 miles of sewers. And last but not least, we're also responsible for air, noise, and hazardous waste controls and enforcement in the city. So the system right now is not particularly circular in terms of actual water. We are, of course, making efforts to recover solids and energy from our wastewater stream. But the system, starts at our water supply reservoirs, is used in buildings in the city, is in some cases combined with precipitation that falls in our streets. And ultimately, after treatment, is discharged to New York Harbor, which of course is an extension of the Atlantic Ocean. And so we're increasingly looking to opportunities to close the loop. As I mentioned, one of the main focuses is on resource recovery from our wastewater stream. But today I'm going to talk about water recovery and how we can optimize water reuse. And so in New York, we don't have the same driver as some other parts of the United States that are pushing water reuse, in that they are typically looking to augment or optimize their water supply. We have had periodic droughts in New York, such as this one shown in 2001 on the top left. Luckily, we have many reservoirs, so our supply was not completely depleted. But the image on the right is really what we anticipate to see more of. This is a heavy rain event from 2004. And rainfall is increasingly getting more heavy. We've had years with over 80 inches of rain, if you can see back to 1980. And we are expecting our annual precipitation to increase by 4 to 11% by 2050, which doesn't sound like much, but if we start to see these peaks and dips and peaks, we're noticing that our weather is becoming wetter and wilder, as I've heard our colleagues in Copenhagen say. So in dealing with the wet weather events, we're increasingly increasing our green infrastructure practices. So taking runoff from impervious areas, diverting it into rain gardens, and then letting it infiltrate into the ground. And we're not, the New York City groundwater supply is not a source of drinking water for us. And so we don't have concerns with regards to closing the loop there with the aquifer recharge. But this is a way to take pressure off of our sewer systems. As you saw in my earlier graphic, it's a combined sewer system. So in a large part of the city, when there's a heavy rain event, there's untreated sewage that is spilling into the harbor. So this is primarily a strategy that we're employing for reducing combined sewer overflows. But increasingly, we're also looking to employ this for decreasing urban flooding. On the other side of the equation, we're constantly looking for opportunities to optimize our drinking water supply. We've had a water demand management program in place since 2013, where we're actively working with partners to retrofit fixtures. This is toilets, urinals, ice machines, spray showers in parks, any opportunity we can find to optimize our existing supply. This not only increases our resiliency to future drought, but also decreases the flow to our sewer systems, also helping us with our combined sewer overflows. And we have found opportunities here as well to close the loop on some of the fixtures that we've been replacing. We've actually used the porcelain from some of the toilets that we've taken out and have used them first on the top right in the some of the green infrastructure rain gardens that we're putting in the street. And then on the bottom right, where we did a project where we used the porcelain to help promote oyster reefs in Jamaica Bay, which is just south of JFK Airport. And so the good news is that water demand is decreasing to a now historic low. That's 981 million gallons per day in 2020, even though population is at a relative high of about 8.3 million people in 2020. So where we are looking to go next is really merging the two. So water conservation and reuse and innovative stormwater management and resiliency. At the nexus of that, we have an integrated water management approach. So ideally, when we're implementing projects, we're achieving multiple benefits. And so water reuse really fits in very nicely in that nexus. It reduces potable water use, it increases capacity of our wastewater infrastructure by reducing flows to the sewer system and our wastewater facilities. It therefore reduces flow to the sewer system that can contribute to combined sewer overflows during a heavy rain event. And by reducing flow to the wastewater facilities, it's also reducing the energy used for treatment. And so we have a couple of examples of water reuse in the city that have actually been funded by my agency. Most of the projects have been funded through our green infrastructure program, but we're also increasingly funding these programs through our water conservation and reuse programs. The top left is in the Bronx. This is a project that collects rainwater and uses it for a rooftop greenhouse. The bottom left is the Brooklyn Botanic Garden that has closed the loop and is collecting stormwater to help replenish water bodies in the park. The top right is the Fire Academy, which is using or collecting water that is used to calibrate fire trucks. And instead of letting it run off into the river, is collecting that water to be able to reuse it for the next truck that needs to be calibrated. And finally, Local 1 Plumbers Union in Queens is using rainwater for some of its training facilities. In-building reuse is happening and has been happening for some time in New York City, but not so much on public property. Rather, this is really taking place in private property. And the timeline of reuse in New York is really that the development happened prior to the regulations and the incentives being in place. So the Battery Park City Solaire was the first residential high-rise with on-site water reuse. And following that, we created our first incentive program to provide a discount on the water rates to buildings that implement water reuse in New York City. In 2008, we started to adopt water reuse and water conservation into the plumbing code. DOB stands for Department of Buildings. And then officially in 2014, Department of Buildings introduced an appendix specifically for water recycling systems. In 2016, we launched a grant program. So in addition to providing a rate discount for buildings that implement water reuse, we're also now providing a grant for capital funding. And we relaunched that program in 2019 to expand the criteria and make more types of systems eligible, including not just reuse, but also other water conservation projects. And then finally, in 2020, the plumbing code is being revised. Instead of having water quality standards embedded in the plumbing code, it will now defer to the Department of Health. DOH, MH stands for the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and they will be taking responsibility for water quality when it comes to water reuse. So these are the incentive programs that I've mentioned, and I don't want to take too much longer, so we can come back to this later. But these are the comprehensive water reuse program, which is the rate incentive, and then the grant program, which is the capital funding incentive. And these are available on our website, which I will provide a link to. And increasingly, water reuse is becoming a prominent part of the conversation at the national level. So I believe it was last year, February 2020, there was the National Water Reuse Action Plan that is setting a national agenda, rather, for water reuse in the United States. And prior to that, cities working with the Water Research Foundation and others had taken a lead in developing guidance to help cities that want to promote water reuse. And so I'll stop there. As I mentioned, a lot of the information that I discussed is available on our website. You can find it at this link, and you can reach us by emailing waterconservation@dep.nyc.gov. So thank you.
Super, thanks, Alan. That's the third time I think I've seen you present, and it's still interesting. So thanks for that. If if you could stop sharing your screen, we'll have Tina. You will be next. Tina Monk from Ramble. You just have a short presentation. I think maybe you're muted.
I'm muted.
There you
So 2 screens, always a challenge. Let's see if it wants to move into slideshow. Yes. Okay. Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Trine Munk, and I work for Ramble, where I'm head of resilience. And for those that do not know Ramble, it's a global consultancy company with about 16,000 colleagues worldwide. We're founded in 1945 and work as an interdisciplinary consultancy company across multiple markets and across the world. We're owned by a foundation, so that means all the profits from what we do goes into this foundation that has a philanthropical outlook, so funds anything from schoolyards to C40 cities, if you know that initiative, and so on. Yes, I stole this from Alan, but it's basically just to say that we worked also in New York City with DEP, but we also work globally in other aspects with sustainability and resilience. So I'll talk a little bit broader about some of the trends that we see in this realm, but I completely agree with Alan that a lot of what we're seeing is this link between, or basically you can say closing the water cycles, looking at water conservation and resiliency in the same lens. We also see a lot of you can say synergies and conflicts between sustainability and resilience. So increasingly we're looking at them separately and then marrying them afterwards to make sure that we get it all and that we're not actually compromising sustainability when we wouldn't want to, and vice versa. So we're looking at improving some of the frameworks that we're working with to get much sharper on this. That also means that we're broadening everything we do, even though the water is the driver. We're actually looking at the entire, you can say, public realm and the city space. So it's not only water that we're looking at, even though it's the driver. And we have some examples from around the world where we see water as the driver for urban development. This one is from Copenhagen, where it started even before 2009. Actually, somebody wanted to be able to swim in an industrial harbor, and most people thought it was crazy. But then through incentives and so on over numerous years, today it's one of the trademarks of Copenhagen to actually be able to jump into the water and swim in the harbor. Similarly, they're also doing their cloudburst management plans, and it's this commitment to an agenda, and then also thinking about how this actually influences everything else we do in the city. So for Copenhagen, for sure, stormwater management or water in general is a driver for how we're designing the city today. And I think this is super interesting and something that we see many places in the world. This is a toolbox that we developed for master planning Canada. And it's a stormwater management toolbox, but basically all the focus that we have in here is on everything else, because we know exactly how we want to manage stormwater, but we just want to achieve so many other things. We like to call it co-benefits, and Alan also mentioned it. So it's something with local food production, sustainable soil balance, all these items that we're looking at when we actually design for water. So we're changing our mindset, and we're changing the typologies that we're actually introducing in the city. So basically you can say water management is driving so much more today than we saw some years ago. And often we look at all these pretty renderings and so on, and we think, well, is this even possible in reality? And we have some really cool examples of implemented projects that were driven by flooding, for instance, of water quality. And after they're implemented, because there was this focus on co-benefits, we actually see them provide so much more. So this one is from St. Anne in Copenhagen, one of the first cloudburst projects. And it is a flood reduction project, but it's provided new employment, new businesses come up, new playgrounds. So instead of being an area where you park your car, it's actually an area you come to enjoy. And the business case for this obviously looks completely different. So that is something that we work a lot on, trying to understand how funding mechanisms can be improved, by actually focusing a lot more on these co-benefits also when we talk about the business case. So it's not just investment and cost and risk reduction, it's also everything else. It's air quality, recreational uses, and so on. And that is really changing how we think about things, but also very much how we work. This climate justice is also something that we're starting to see a lot more. So equity, I know, is also on DEP's agenda. That's everywhere. Equity is key to the future. And I think having water drive so much also actually presents a new responsibility where you can think about how much you can actually improve. So not just related to water, but also to some of the other socioeconomic challenges than we see in the urban space. That means that many of our projects are much more bottom up than we've seen before. We're engaging with churches, schools, communities, and so on as we go out and we design our projects. That means they look completely different than we would normally have done. And it's teaching them and us a lot as we move forward. And it's basically, you can say it's a win-win for many. And we have a bunch of really, really good examples of how that's been done from around the world with different focuses. Some are more flood oriented, some are water conservation oriented, but they also have something in common, that they typically focus on either both or multiple benefits. So we would like to think of our solutions as not providing one solution, but actually fixing multiple problems, you can see. And I brought one example from Singapore, so an old drainage channel that was turned into a nice park. And obviously it's a cool project because it's big and it's implemented so we can show it. But actually it was more the collaboration with community and with universities that was really, really cool. So for instance, this is a water treatment area where we have circulation in the little plots you can see, where we test different treatment methods with the local university. We also worked with the schools, making sure that there was education as part of the program. I know DEP is also working on this. And it's just proven immensely giving, both for them and for us. And then obviously we care about nature and biodiversity. So we like to see that there's some local animal life in our projects. And this is how it looks today. But it's one of several projects where we've seen that engaging with community is really, really key in not only meeting our targets on water management and be leading, you can say, on sustainability and resilience, but it's also providing multiple benefits. And actually for the taxpayer and the ratepayer, it's really maximizing what you get from what you're paying. Yes, I'll stop here.
Super, thanks, Tina.
Yep.
You could stop sharing your screen.
Yes, I'll try.
And then we have just 2 more people to showcase, and then we'll go into a bit of more Q&A. I'll just share my screen. We have, first up, we have Fernando Ramirez from Hydroloop. If you could, hopefully you can see my screen, Fernando. So away you go.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Fernando Ramirez, I'm Managing Director for Hydroloop in the US. Hydroloop is a Dutch company, so based in the Netherlands. We have been working in developing a decentralized water recycling system to conserve, reduce water consumption, optimize the use of our precious water resource. So water conservation is core to our mission. We have, as an organization, have a commitment to ensuring that we can bring technology and innovation to the challenges that we see globally. And globally does not suggest just in developing countries. This water crisis, the water challenge, is a global problem that we all face, and one of the biggest challenges to humanity. For those of you that might have been following Hydroloop or perhaps had the opportunity to watch Brave Blue World documentary on Netflix, it was a tremendous documentary that really highlighted to the global community the challenges of the water crisis globally. But equally as important, it wasn't just highlighting the challenge, it also presented solutions, presented the innovation from necessity driven by human challenges, but also companies like Hydroloop were part of that documentary. So we were very proud to be selected to be part of that, and it highlights the powerful solution that we have put together. From a water recycling and reuse, we all know we're essentially throwing water away every day. And this is water, fresh water, that there's less than 3% of available water, freshwater use globally. So the pain, the solution that we all need to work towards is how do we minimize that? How do we maximize our water supply to ensure that day zero is not upon us? And when we turn the tap, water actually comes out. And in many parts of the country, it does not. There are significant challenges in urban environments, climate change, increased population, drought conditions. If you look at parts of the Western United States, they're in constant drought conditions. They're constantly struggling to maintain fresh water available, not only to all their inhabitants, but also to maintain green spaces for parks, for recreation. And that challenge will increase as population continues to increase, primarily in urban settings. We're obviously supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDG number 6, clean water and sanitation. So our contribution allows us to participate in a number of innovative opportunities to bring technology into this kind of innovative requirements that the industry is gravitating towards, but we need to accelerate the adoption. I applaud New York City's program, researched it extensively. It's been in place for a number of years, and it's been evolving. And that's part of what we need to continue to address in major metropolitan areas, major metropolitan cities. We provide a program we call Recycle Ready. And Recycle Ready is really designed to educate, demonstrate, and implement programs at both the home and business level. So our solution is designed to apply to both the domestic consumption as well as the commercial consumption. And in studies and some of our results on some of our projects, that's up to 45% of potential water that can be reduced in consumption. So if we think about that, consider the fact that our studies can and have projected saving 30 to 36,000 gallons annually per home. Multiply that by 100,000 homes. The numbers add up. The numbers are real. The numbers are significant. The numbers are measurable. So that kind of activity continues to become part of our agenda. In urban settings, we're engaged in discussions where water reuse and water recycle, which, by the way, our system is NSF 350 certified, which allows us to reuse water for other applications. In urban settings, we see it using in rooftop gardens. There's a big push that has both an energy and a water component. The energy-water nexus is a very interesting opportunity for all of us. Think about you reusing water for your gardens, your rooftop gardens that are initially designed to reduce energy in buildings. We can bring some water to those parks, gardens, public spaces. Southern California, if you look around the Southern California area, around John Wayne Airport, very green, beautiful trees. They're using water recycling to water those and maintain them in that condition. So as we look forward and we continue to expand our solutions and drive innovation, to follow up on one of Alan's comments, we want to be part of the solution. We want to be part of optimizing existing supply and reduce sewer overflows. And it's both contributors. Our technology allows us to do that in a meaningful way. We also submit that in some parts of the world, in some parts of our country, regulations need to keep up pace with innovation. And that is a reality of when we bring technology and a solution like this, that we need to be aware of how do we contribute and collaborate with the water entities, with the water organizations, with the departments of environmental protection to ensure that the solution is clearly understood, we provide education, and we advance the implementation of such technology. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Fernando. We'll quickly go straight into Nana, who's representing LNH Water. So if you could just quickly give your quick introduction to yourself.
Yes,
and the
I will
company.
give a really quick introduction. My name is Nana Ravn. I'm from a very small engineering company located in Copenhagen, Denmark. We are only 3 people employed, and we have a couple of part-time employees as well. We specialize in strategic planning of urban drainage system, including pipe models, impervious surface mapping, hydraulic modeling, measurement programs, and damage calculations. And some of the services that my company provides is a strategic overview of complex urban water system, its method and software development, and building knowledge among our customer, which is usually utilities in Denmark, through training and mentoring schemes. We have developed our own software called MOPS. It stands for Model Development System, and it's a data management system for analysis and system overview of a drainage system. Our software is implemented in 3 of the 4 largest utilities in Denmark, covering approximately 30% of the Danish populations. For instance, in the Copenhagen area alone, more than 300 cloud-burst solution has been implemented in the software, and it can be used to assess the effect and interactions between the proposed solutions as the system is updated and developed over time, as well as assess if these solutions can be used to handle everyday rain as well and help create a more blue-green city. And we think that the urban water management model should focus a lot more on reducing, reusing and recycling water instead of merely extracting, transporting and disposing of water. And when we move into this more decentralized way of water management, things get a lot more complicated. Like you heard from Trine, it's a very complex system. So we think we should encourage the interactions between different technologies at multiple scales, as well as across the urban water cycling domains, such as drinking water, rainwater, wastewater, and stormwater. When we also have external drivers, such as climate change adaptation, different rainwater patterns. We have changes in demographics. We have to take into account operational cost, operational difficulties, so it gets more and more complicated. But we think when we start to introduce these smart water aware units in the city on a neighborhood level, we are moving towards a step closer towards the circular city in New York. So very short. Thank you.
Super. Thanks, Nana, and thanks to all of you for giving a quick overview and introduction. Time is running quick. I think we're very optimistic in this 45 minutes, but we can just quickly jump into some questions here around some of the presentations you had. And there's been a few questions in the chat, but I think, Alan, you've already answered them, so you're being very efficient. But I have a first question here, more general I'll start with Alan, in terms of, you presented a number of government programs and support mechanisms for these new solutions, ideas. What is the biggest barriers for water reuse in New York City that you've experienced?
I think the single biggest barrier is there's been a lack of an entry point in terms of who's responsible in government. So the starting point is really Department of Buildings, because they ultimately are responsible for the plumbing code and permitting water reuse systems to go into place. But then there's, us, the DP, who administers the incentives and the grant program. And then increasingly, the Department of Health, as I mentioned in my presentation, is going to be playing a role. So I think it's a very complicated landscape to navigate unless you have been working with us in the past. So for someone who's trying to get into this space, you know, that's very confusing. However, you know, by offering the grant program, we're trying to take on more of a role as an entry point to help anyone who's interested in implementing water reuse in trying to navigate the ins and outs of water reuse in the city.
Okay, cool. I guess maybe Fernando, from your perspective, in terms of obviously you're coming with a technology company and entering the markets. From that perspective, what's the biggest issues that you have? I guess maybe this will be very similar to what Alan said, or
yes, confusion is being optimistic. It's a challenge for sure. I will share, I came from the energy industry, so I'm familiar with the utility thought process and the need to understand in order to adapt, in order to accelerate new technologies. And the water industry is no different, right? So we see in major areas, and I understand it. It's a public health issue. It's a matter of providing a solid foundation of why some of these technologies make sense. But I think also EPA's involvement is also trying to accelerate at the federal level, accelerate the water reuse programs. So there's legislation in place. And also, I'll share with you states like California, where the crisis is been growing and expanding. There's legislation being considered to limit and reduce the amount of water per household per day. Legislation to reduce water consumption. That's how dramatic some parts of the country are getting. So we encourage the expansion of water reuse programs. We understand the challenges within the industry, but it's a part of the process that we want to be more involved with, because we need to make sure that technology and innovation is embraced.
okay, cool. And I guess Nana been working in Denmark and working with the multiple Danish utility companies, water utilities. And obviously, you presented your software program in terms of collecting data. Is there something from your experience that is missing in terms of that data collection, and what would be useful in advancing the uptake of these kind of reuse technologies? I think you're muted, by the way.
Yeah, when we're doing our models, we need to have a boundary condition for inflow and outflow of the system. And since this is all new technology, we don't know much about how efficient are the different harvesting methods, how much water is retained, how much can be reused, and how much is it actually reducing the overflow, because it will have different effects on the system, reducing flooding, improving the environment, increasing the blue and green areas within the city. So it's multidisciplinary. So I'm just from a hydraulic modeling point of view, but we need to interact more with all different kinds of technologies in order to better understand and take informed solutions on how we want to build our cities in the future.
Cool. And I guess Trina, obviously in Ramble, you're working with multiple cities around the world from a more kind of planning kind of perspective. I don't know if there's any best cases. You mentioned Singapore. Obviously, that's a very visible one. But any kind of unusual kind of cases that you would say this is the right step forward within reuse? Yeah.
Well, I think there was also just a comment in the chat. I saw that what is the driver for water reuse, right? And I think one of the important aspects is that the driver will be different in each city. So for Singapore, for instance, they were relying on a contract to get water from neighboring countries, and that contract is expiring. So they have to figure out how do they then supplement their water supply. Obviously, desalination is big in Singapore, but then they're also looking at other aspects. For other cities, it's in Denmark, obviously, water prices are quite high. But we can also have periods where water supply is more challenging than others. And then there are other cities that do it basically, you can say, in the name of sustainability, where water supply has never really been an issue. But then again, flushing with potable water, flushing your toilets with potable water starts becoming something that you actually think is not something we can do and still look ourselves in the eyes. So I think the driver for water conservation and water reuse is unique to each location based on the climatic conditions and the water prices and availability of water and so on. And I think that's super important to think or keep in mind when we look at both New York City, but also other cities.
Cool. I guess, yeah, we're running out of time very quickly, but the thing that was mentioned the most, obviously we're talking about reuse of water and closing the loop. I would like to give each of you kind of speakers just one, 2 sentence on what you think closing the loop is in the future. What is the thing that's going to be happening in the near future within closing the loop? And let's start with Alan. Let's go back around again.
I think, one of the things that we're going to start seeing, I hope, is that there's going to be that this push from, both the bottom, meaning the developers that are implementing water reuse systems, the cities that are trying to promote better governance and incentives, and then the top, meaning EPA, the federal government and states, I think can do a lot more and will be doing a lot more to promote water reuse. But we do need those two things to somewhat come together, because there's only so much that we can do at the city level and that developers can do. And so much of what we do is determined by the state and federal government and what they're doing to promote water reuse. So I'm hopeful that that there will be a real groundswell and that all of us will sort of be coming together to promote more implementation over the coming years.
Cool, thanks, Alan. Same question to you, Fernando.
Yes, I've given that a lot of thought over the last few months. But one of the things that we're very interested and encouraged by is this grassroots movement from domestic users, the homeowners, commercial building developers, where they want to have this type of technology available to improve their facilities, to maximize natural resources, and are looking to bring this to the water industry, to water companies. So the message is, by combining projects, so this kind of domestic and commercial demand is going to drive, accelerate adaptation as well. And I think it takes all of us combined to be able to bring that to the utilities in a way that it can be understood, accepted, and advanced.
Cool, thanks, Fernando. And Nana, same question.
Yeah, just agreeing with Alan a lot, but also accepting that water doesn't have any boundaries. It doesn't work with regulation. It's just water will go where it will go, and we have to accept that it can have both negative and positive value in order to overcome all these challenges. And hopefully in Denmark, we are moving towards a more integrated regulation now, moving from the utility to the municipality, are working more closely together now, and also working together with innovation companies and university to find solutions for this. So it's kind of a joint workforce we need to look at for this problem.
Yes, very much agree. And Trina, if you final comment on that.
Yeah, I agree with all of them. There's too much agreement, but no, but I do agree. And then maybe just adding that I think the technical pieces, we know them by now. I mean, we can still innovate and so on, but we know them. But what we need is to have these mindset changes that allow for new standards to be tested, both at the building scale, but also much beyond. And then mindset changes also include the domestic water users, the kids, the local administrators, and so on. So I think it's very much on the people, at least for me, to advance on this. So I think we all have a role in that.
Super, thanks. We are now hitting 45 minutes, but I just have quickly, just to wrap up, I'll just quickly mention a couple of programs where we're actually working with the with Alan at the DEP in supporting some of this discussion that we just had around this connection between different stakeholders, etc. So there's two programs that Clean is partnering in and driving. So we have one which is called, which you can see here, is an EU-funded project by the COSME program called the EU Tech Bridge, where we are focusing on end users, people like Alan in the DEP, also utility companies, private building owners, etc. in North America. So we've been working in New York, specifically around more energy, but we're focusing now stronger in water, where we have this program where we have resources to match up technologies from SMEs across Europe with North American, so bridging that gap between knowledge and also kind of hopefully partnerships being developed. So we're going to be hosting in April East Coast webinar with some more end users. So that's just to let the participants know that there is this program. You can see the website here. And the partners down the bottom. So it's a free program for SMEs to be involved in. And we also have one which I'm working directly with Alan with, and also Natalie, is we're doing a joint New York City and Copenhagen urban water vision challenge. And this is part of the Access Cities program. And it's focusing on stormwater and kind of capturing stormwater and how to clean it, use it, monitor it, etc. So we're running this kind of short innovation process through April to develop group solutions. So companies coming together and working together and to pitch to both New York and Copenhagen and some other kind of panelists, hopefully to see what can be done with the winning kind of solutions and whether there's some relevance to take these into Copenhagen and New York. Yeah, this is happening very soon. You can see kind of the specifics of the challenge here, looking at purifying, handling, and monitoring of water quality. So I'd encourage anyone interested to sign up. I'll share the presentation, etc. After this session. And feel free to anyone to contact myself at Clean. My contact is here. And before we just finish, I'd like to just thank Alan, Nana, Fernando, and Trina for joining, and for Natalie and the good work at the Circular City Week New York. It's a great kind of platform to showcase kind of these things. And I hope it's been interesting for everyone. And I wish you all a good day, and thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Scott. Bye.
Bye.